Welcome, welcome. Last week we got together and we talked about a plan for your money, right? We talked about the importance of having a plan, and we talked about two very vital components to that plan. And so we talked about budgeting, and we talked about Dave Ramsey's 7 baby steps. So tonight I'd like to take a deeper dive into budgeting. Let's really talk about what a budget is. Let's also talk about what a budget is not. One second. Talk about what a budget is not, and then we'll get into some of the nuances of what goes into a budget and all those different line items, and maybe even talk about how we're stashing cash into envelopes again. And I really want to take a look at budget busters. So we'll talk about anything that has tripped anybody up lately, and how you kind of overcome that and make sure that you get on a path where it doesn't continue to trip you up, pay period after pay period. And so that's one of the other things I'm going to want to talk about in the budget this time around, is talk about the different pay periods. Some of us get paid every 2 weeks. Some of us get paid weekly. There are people out there who get paid on the 1st and 15th or just on the 1st. And so we can also talk about what it means to budget for the month, but then what it also means to budget for a pay period. So that's kind of our gamut tonight. And to start us off, let's talk about, at large, budgeting for the month. Right? So it is October 30th. November starts in 2 days. And so we each should be at a point where we've at least started to map out what November looks like. So first and foremost, is everybody there so far? Everybody got at least a penciled version of November's budget on paper, on purpose? Nice. All right, so given the fact that we're 2 days away from the beginning of the month, we should have all had an opportunity just to kind of take a look at the month as a whole. We know how many times we're getting paid, and so how much money is coming in, and then we should be looking at when are our bills due and when is everything getting paid out. But just because the month starts tomorrow or in 2 days doesn't necessarily mean we get paid in 2 days. So let's go round robin and talk about what's your first pay date in November. Do not include tomorrow. Right? I know a lot of us getting paid tomorrow, but don't include that. So what's your first pay date in November? Roseanne, if you're talking, you're on mute. Go ahead, Jackie.
Our first pay day is going to be the 14th.
All right, so November 14th, you're halfway through the month before you get your first paycheck in November.
November 7th.
November 7th for you, Roseanne? Chad, how about you? When's your first pay date in November, bud? No. Might be having technical difficulties. All right, so Roseanne, you got to wait a week for money in November, and Jackie and David, you guys got 2 weeks, same as me, right? The 14th of November. So how do we make sure that all the bills up until the 14th are getting paid? Or for you, Roseanne, to the 7th. All right, David.
A budget.
Well, of course, a budget.
Have a plan put together.
All right, but if the money doesn't start rolling in until the 14th, and I got rent due on the 1st, what do I got to do?
And you mean if you didn't already have money put aside to pay those bills?
Yeah, that's kind of the point I'm driving home towards, right?
Which many people fall into.
Yeah. So I'll stop beating around the bush. The point is this. If you don't get paid until the 14th of November, then you should have been planning for the last paycheck in October to help you out to get you through the 14th of November. right? So it's about sitting down before the month begins to write out your budget, understand, what your income for that month is going to be, what date expenses are due, and planning for those expenses accordingly. So if you have rent and electricity and other utilities due at the beginning of the month, then that last paycheck in October needed to be allocated as such. So you always need to be planning in one month for anything in the next month that you need to cover until you get paid. So I just wanted to make that point and talk about that. Have we ever, anybody have a story where they've experienced something different where maybe they didn't plan in like the month of October for early expenses in the month of November and how that works out for you?
Before this, I would have issues with that. Well, before we were on a budget, or probably when we were not together, because he's always been pretty good with money. But I used to think that I had enough, and then I didn't, and then I found myself going into this whole cycle of actually getting payday advances, which I would never recommend anybody because it's the most vicious cycle you'll ever have. It's like the worst thing to ever do. So I used to have to do stuff like that.
Yeah, I've been there. Payday loans. Man, those are evil. The worst. So yeah, it's really important. So for me, this particular month, there was 3 pay periods in this month. I get paid every 2 weeks, and so it's always nice to think like, oh, 3 paychecks instead of 2, yay, more money. No, what it really means is, since I'm getting paid on October 31st, and the mortgage payment is due on the 1st, and the car insurance is due on the 8th, and other bills are due before I get paid again, it meant sitting down in October to plan for those expenses in early November and making sure that when I got paid on October 31st, those expenses get paid. I used to think that November money paid November bills, right? That's how I used to think. November money paid November bills. That's not the case. If you have bills early in the month and one of your last paychecks in the month prior is going to need to be used to satisfy those expenses until you get paid. So you're always kind of working about a 30-day rolling period ahead. Right? It is important to look at October as a month and to look at November as a month, but every time you sit down at a pay period, you're looking at a kind of a rolling 30 days. What's going to happen over the next 30 days? All right. So, excuse me. So I did want to talk about what a budget is and what a budget is not, because I think there's a lot of misconceptions out there about budgeting, and people think it's evil, and a budget means that I have to, shop at the store for just bread and water, and I'm not allowed to like pick up a steak. And so let's talk about that a little bit, and I'd like to get you guys' first impressions of a budget. So Roseanne, I'm going to start with you. What was your first, whether it was this plan or whether it was years before this plan, what was your first conception or perception of a budget? Was it a good thing? A bad thing? Did you not have a perception? How'd you feel about it? Unmute.
I thought the budget was a bad thing. Sorry, my mute button wouldn't pop up.
No, that's all right. That's all right.
I was like, oh man, I'm not going to have money to do anything at all.
And so, when did that first begin? Like, was that recent or was that a long time ago?
Well, before we got in touch with you, Reggie tried putting us on a budget, but his way of doing it was taking our debit cards away from me, so I couldn't spend any money. So I felt like I was being punished as a child. And that I got to go ask Daddy for money.
It's so interesting that you say it that way, because Dave Ramsey talks about that very thing, and about how like budgets are usually used to abuse people or to kind of to make them behave, although that's not their purpose, right? So thank you for sharing that. How about you, Jackie? The word budget, how'd you feel about that word?
I used to hate the word budget because David and I have been on a budget for a really long time, and although he had like good things that he was doing, we were just kind of like stashing money and it would go nowhere. And then I felt like I'd have to, like she said, go to my dad for money, and it was really annoying. And I felt like I was limited on everything that I was doing. But I don't feel that way at all anymore, with at least with the budget that we're doing with you.
Okay. So you both mentioned you felt like you had to kind of go ask Daddy for money, right? So since you both said it, I think it's important that we explore that a little bit. And if it's different today, if you don't feel this sensation that you have to go ask Daddy for money, what changed? How did a budget change that?
I'll go first, Rose, since
No,
you're...
I am.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
I feel that it changed because we know where our money's going. Like, we assign it, and we say this amount is going to Verizon, this amount is going towards a debt, this amount is going towards another electric bill or gas bill or whatever the case may be. We know exactly where it's going, and we used to have a lot of our bills on auto pay, and we would forget that's coming out, and then we'd overdraft our account. And now we took everything off of auto pay, and we are saying, okay, you can pay $25 to this and not have to worry, oh my God, that just came out.
Very cool. What about you, Jackie?
I think Roseanne explained it well. I mean, we now know where our money's going to, and on top of that, we have this money in the envelope, and we're both looking at the budget, and we both have an understanding of what that budget is. We have an understanding of what's being allotted where. So I don't have to ask him if I need to go get something from the grocery. I know exactly how much money is there, and I know what we have to last us for another 2 weeks. So I know now. Like, before, I didn't know this stuff. Like, I would look at the budget with him, but then I didn't have a realistic idea of what was really there and what was still coming out. I had no idea, but we're on a cash system now, so now we know what's there and what's not there. And then I can take money and go do what I need to go do, and not feel like I have to ask him for any of it, because actually the money stays with me. He's usually actually asking me for the grocery money, some grocery money to go to the store, and it's not a negative thing. It's just I happen to hold the cash.
Yeah, because that was going to be my next question. Is if you guys were saying, you felt like you had to ask for money, but the budget has helped you to realize like where the money is going. So my next question was going to be, what were you asking for money for in the past? And it sounds like at least one of the things, Jackie, was grocery money. Do we have enough money for me to go to the grocery store and shop for food? But you would actually have to stop and ask. You couldn't just go. You kind of had to like check in, right?
Yeah, like I had to ask for money for like groceries, or if I wanted to get something else like a non-food type item, I'd have to like be like, oh, do we have money that I can get this? Like, can I get a candle for the house? Like, I love getting candles, and I don't have to ask him, hey, can I have this money? We have a certain amount of budgeted, like a certain budget allotted for each thing. So if we have the money there, I can get it. If not, then I don't get it. So the money's telling me yes or no, not my husband.
Yeah, that's why I love the cash system, because the answer is simply, is there money in the envelope? Then yes. If there's not money in the envelope, the answer is no. How about you, Roseanne? What Jackie just gave like a great example of like the most ridiculous thing she had to ask for, which was like, can she buy a candle? What about you, Roseanne? What's the most ridiculous thing that you're like, I cannot believe I have to call to ask for this? You're on mute again.
I'm going to turn this over to Reggie.
Hey, Reggie.
Why are you turning to me? The most ridiculous thing she asked for is
Not me, you.
coffee creamer.
What was that? Coffee what?
Coffee creamer.
Can I buy coffee creamer?
Well, she buys like three things a week, so they go out so fast. That's why.
Wow.
Now, no, but seriously, I mean that's true. But seriously, the biggest thing is with us is just using that debit card. I think that's the biggest thing. That's the bane of our existence with this budget is swiping that debit card. That's her biggest bad habit.
Yeah,
It's
no,
annoying.
we've talked about that before, but it's worth mentioning again that when you spend with a debit card, first of all, you spend more naturally, just because of a number of different factors. The biggest factor being you don't necessarily feel it. Right? You don't feel it leaving your account. You're just swiping a card and entering a couple of digits. But when you have an envelope with cash in it, and you see like I have $40, this equals $28. I will only have so many dollars left. You start to actually behave differently. Absolutely. All right, so that's the most ridiculous thing you guys have had to ask permission for. For me, I shared this last week. I'll share it again this week. My wife used to have to call me and, do we have money for this? Do we have money for that? And one time it was to get our daughter's ears pierced. And apparently I got the story wrong last week, so my wife corrected me. It wasn't a debit card. It was back when we actually used credit cards, and she swiped the credit card, and the credit card was declined. And then she swiped the debit card, and that overdrafted us, so we had a big fight about $8 earrings because we were broke. Like, that's sad broke. I like my new broke. My new broke is I have money in the bank, and I'm paying my bills. So that's my new broke. So it's a much better place to be in. All right, so we started to kind of uncover what a budget is. A budget is really just a plan for your money. And we shared this last week. I'll share it again this week because, again, this is worth mentioning every time we get together, and that is you need to tell your money where to go. Right? You need to tell it where to go instead of wonder where it went. So at the beginning of the month, you say, hey, we're going to allocate this much money for groceries. Let's call it $200 a paycheck. Let's call it $400 for the week. So when you get paid, you take $200 out. You put it in a nice little envelope, and then you can go shopping. And then to Jackie's point, the answer is simple. If you have money in the envelope, you can go grocery shopping. If you don't have money in the envelope, you cannot go grocery shopping. It's really that simple. And gone are the days of having to call the spouse to figure out, do we have money for this? How much money do we have for this? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So a budget is a plan for your money. On paper, on purpose, every single month, brand new. We talked about templated budgets and why those are bad last week, so I'm not going to recover or cover that again this week. But bad. Templated budgets, bad, bad, bad. Brand new budget every month, on paper, on purpose. So let's talk about what a budget is not, which is kind of a tricky question. I think there's a lot of misconceptions that like a budget is, just my expenses for this particular month, and then whatever is left over, I get to go and like spend, or spend however I want. I think other people also think that a budget means that if you look at it, and let's say, like, let's take groceries again for a second, and you say, I get $200 every paycheck. Well, that breaks down to $100 a week. And some people might think, like, that's not enough. And so then they start to feel bad if they budget more than that. But they shouldn't feel bad, because it's just a plan for your money. So let's first talk about extra money. Like, if you write out a budget, your income is $4,000 a month, you write out all your expenses, and it totals up to $3,500, and there's $500 left over. Like, what do we do with that $500? Roseanne, I'm going to come to you on this, or Reggie. You guys are on mute.
She was spending.
Pay her school.
Oh, sorry, Chad. You were going to weigh in? Go ahead.
Oh no, my wife said pay her school loans. She actually, here's my wife, by the way. She just sat down with everyone.
Hello, hello. Welcome.
She said pay her school loans. Is that a good answer?
That is a good answer, as long as, so you guys are a little bit new to the format, so let's talk about that in a little bit more detail. Every single month, you're going to write out a budget that starts with your income. You know what you guys are getting paid in the month. You know what's coming in. Then you're going to start to identify what all of your expenses are. I mean, every single expense. And then after you pay the minimums on everything, if there is money left over, it is now time to take that money and apply it towards debt. So that is a perfect answer, as long as you go through all the other steps first to realize that you truly have an extra $500. Because here's what often happens. What often happens in budgeting is people will not necessarily budget for birthday gifts or for dinner out or for a movie. And so they have $500 left over, and they just naturally start going and spending on those categories, right? They'll go out to dinner because they're like, hey, we've got some money in the bank. Let's go out to dinner tonight. Oh, and after dinner, let's go catch that movie. And after the movie, let's go shopping because you know what? The weather's changing. It's getting a little nippy outside, and I want a new sweater. And all of a sudden, you look back, and you wonder, where in the world did $500 go? Because it just evaporated. Right? It's just gone. So it's about sitting down and allocating out money appropriately, and if you have $500 left at the end of it, and you've considered going out to dinner, and you've considered going to the movies, and you've considered all those different things, and you still truly have $500 left over, paying your student loans would be an awesome idea. All right, cool. Apparently we caught Jackie and David during dinner time.
It's always dinner time in this house. Don't judge us.
No judgment. I'm just wondering what you guys are having and why I ain't getting none.
I'm eating too.
So,
Hey, Nino,
go ahead, sir.
that amount that you're talking about, I would tell Jackie it's the ghost amount, because when people create budgets, even like basic budgets sometimes, that extra amount they have left over, they go, hey man, we got all this money, this is extra, but you forget that maybe that birthday was coming up, or this bill's coming out that you forgot about, or something else is coming out, so you keep that running tally, and then all of a sudden it's like, you know how you think that this is how much money's in the bank? It's really $25. Don't look at 500. It's really 25. So we would talk about the ghost amounts that were in there. Like, don't go in the bank account and think that like we rich, we can go do crazy stuff. Like, let's go new Jordans for everybody. Like that kind of thinking, and get away from that thinking, because you will. Or you think I need this. I have to buy this because I need it. Like, I don't have sneakers that match with the clothes that I bought, or I don't have clothes that match with the sneakers I bought, or I need a watch, or whatever it is. When the reality is when you're using cash, and that cash is leaving that envelope, and you know you have still 2 weeks before you can get paid again, you'll make completely different decisions on what you're doing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it goes back. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Quick question. What percentage of your paycheck should you be putting in savings? Let's say that 500 is left. How much of that should go to savings instead of paying the school loans with all of it, or is it just putting everything towards debt, and then after we get rid of the debt, we start putting savings away, or?
Yeah. So earlier on, I said there's two very important key components to being on a plan for your money. The first is a budget, and the second are Dave Ramsey's 7 baby steps. So actually, his first baby step talks about having a $1,000 emergency fund set aside. So once you have $1,000 in the bank in savings, you're going to stop saving money until you're out of debt, because it doesn't necessarily make much sense to save up a bunch of money when you still have a bunch of debt, right? So it would be have $1,000 in the bank as an emergency fund, and then after that you would kind of press pause on saving any money, and you would tackle your debts. So if you had that $500 left over, you already had $1,000 in the bank, you would use all 500 of it to pay student loans. If you don't have the $1,000, you would use the $500 to start saving towards that $1,000 in the bank.
Okay, but my question is, because usually I used to hear that you should save your bills in case one of us loses our job at some point, so that you can have savings for at least 3 to 6 months. Is
Right.
that not agreeing with that?
So that's step number 3. So I can go into the baby steps in greater detail, but when we talk about those, baby step number 3 is save up 3 to 6 months worth of expenses. So in case something like the loss of a job does occur, then you have a fully funded emergency fund, and that's why I said you press pause. So $1,000 isn't enough, but you press pause. It's enough to kind of keep most things at bay, things like a flat tire or changing out, changing out some other type of like car repair or something. It's enough to usually take care of that, so that you can focus on getting out of debt. Because this plan is all about being debt-free. So before you can even start kind of following Dave Ramsey's principles, you have to kind of sell yourself on the idea that I'm going to get myself out of debt, and once I do that, I'm never going back into debt again. That includes things like getting rid of every single credit card and canceling them. My wife and I have already done that. We haven't had a credit card in 9 months, and life is just fine. It's paying off car loans and not going out and getting another car loan. It's we've paid off our cars, and now I drive a car that I don't have a payment on, and I'm in no rush to ever go back into a car payment. In fact, I will never go back into a car payment. I will save up money, and I will pay cash when the time comes. So before you can get on the plan, you have to start to wrestle with those ideas about getting out of debt and then staying out of debt forever.
Okay.
And then once you do that, then you can follow Dave Ramsey's baby steps. Otherwise, if you're just interested in budgeting and you're just interested in how to make my budget work and I'm not really concerned about debt, you could do that. And then there are other entities out there that would talk about like a 10-10-80 budget. And so what that is 10% you would give, 10% you would save, and then you would live off of 80% of your take-home pay. So
Okay.
you could do that, but this group and what I teach and what I help people with is Dave Ramsey's principles, because I'd much rather see everybody get out of debt and change our legacies. And so it's about, therefore, if you follow those principles, it's about having $1,000 in the bank until you're out of debt. Otherwise, you would save about 10% every month. Give 10%, save 10%, and live off of 80. Great question, though.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. All right, so we were talking about what a budget isn't, and so a budget isn't like this wishy-washy, sorta, kinda. We got about this coming in. We spend about that. No, it is sit down, lock it down. You and your spouse together. You get on a plan. You write it down. You tell every single dollar where to go. Right? You give every single dollar an assignment, and so whether that assignment is you're assigning this much to groceries and this much to savings and this much to debt, it doesn't much matter where you're assigning it, but you must assign it somewhere. So I wanted to talk a little bit about what are some of the things that get in the way of budgeting, and what are some of the things that bust our budgets. So we wrote it down, we put it on paper, we had the best intentions, but wouldn't you know it, Murphy showed up and screwed up the entire plan. Jackie, David, what's busted your budget before you were on this plan? What are the things that like tripped you up before you wrote it down on paper on purpose every single month?
Black Friday.
All right. So what about this year? Black Friday going to trip you up this year? No way.
No, because we have extra money for our envelopes that we can make a decision if we would like to get something and if we need it. And if we need it, then we get it. If we don't need it and it's something that we want to get maybe as a Christmas gift, we've already budgeted that money for Christmas. So we're good.
Wait. It's October. You're budgeting for Christmas?
Yeah, we budget for Christmas way in advance to make sure that when Christmas comes, we're not going broke trying to buy everybody Christmas gifts. And next year, everybody's getting a picture of me going like this.
I like it.
Merry Christmas. That's right.
So, David, could you talk a little bit about what that process looked like this year? When you budgeted for Christmas, how did you go about doing that?
We wrote a list of all the people that we definitely were buying gifts for, and then what we did was we averaged an amount of how much do we spend on a gift, like if we're buying gifts for kids or our nephews, or if we're buying gifts for siblings or parents or grandparents or whoever it is, then we wrote them, everyone that we thought we were going to get a list, even if there was a chance that we thought we were going to buy them a gift, we wrote it down. And then what we would do is, I have to check the list. I'll check the list. But what we did was we kind of looked at it and said, okay, so how much do we want to spend? In some cases, some people would be on the list, and we go, why are we buying these people a gift? And we're like, why don't we just give them a card? Or we go from there. And then what we did was we calculated all that amount, and then we said how many paychecks are we going to get before the date, maybe the beginning of December or the first 2 weeks of December, and then let's put a line item in our budget that we can figure out where this is going to come out of, and are we spending more money on something else in the budget that we could reduce, and we could put that money towards maybe putting $50 or $100 every paycheck aside for Christmas time. And the money didn't just include, that list didn't just include like people like that we knew or family members. It included ourselves as well. So like we put down what was the budget for our daughter Gianna, what was the budget for each other. So if I can tell you that it's been good, because when we've been out at the stores, we'll find like a really good deal on a Christmas gift, and we already know how much we're allocated for those specific people. So we don't kind of go, I wonder we're going to get this person, or I wonder we're going to go here. We have an idea already, and it's helped us to kind of say like, hey, let's cross them off the list. This is the amount of money we spend, and it's only cash. So that money comes out directly out of that Christmas envelope of what we used. But what we recently did, and this is something that we recently kind of had a conversation about, is that, like you said earlier in the call, people don't take into account that maybe you've budgeted for something, but you don't think of the other variables in that thing. So we budgeted for gifts, but my wife likes making our house look like a quote-unquote Santa's enchanted forest. So she wants to have lights everywhere, and everybody has a stocking, and you have all this stuff, lights outside, reindeers on motorcycles in the front of the whatever it might be. I'm exaggerating just a little bit, but not so much. So we had to ask the question, where is that money coming from? Because we haven't been budgeting for that. So maybe we reduce something else that we know that we always go under, or we've gone under the past like 2 paychecks or 3 paychecks in the budget. Let's budget that separately so that we know we're not dipping into our presence budget that we've already been doing. Let's have a separate amount that if we need to get new lights, or we need to get a stocking, or even stocking stuffers, or we need to buy a special amount of food, that it would be more than what normally come out of our food budget, then we have that money there ready to go.
Yeah, excellent. I remember you sharing that last week about the extra add-ons, right? So like the Christmas budget, there you can have the original Christmas budget, and then you can have like the Like, you should make it Santa's Enchanted Forest budget. But I like that you guys are sitting down and you're identifying, like, who are we buying for, and then, you know, what are we willing to spend on those people. You know, historically, I've always done that in reverse. It was kind of like, well, who am I buying for? But then, what am I buying them, and how much does that cost? Well, that's not the right way to do a budget. Like, no, write down the person, write down the dollar amount, and then go find something that comes in at or under that dollar amount, right? And it's this time of year that I'm always reminded, like, we have to remember what this time of year is really about. And it is about giving, but it's not about giving of material things, right? We can give of our time, and we can give of ourselves just as much as we give gifts. And to your point, you know, sometimes all they need is a card, right? Like, my mom still loves me, although all she gets is a card. Like, you know, it is what it is. So write down the person, write down the amount, and then go and shop. And if anybody is looking for other ideas on just like ways to really trim down the Christmas budget, you know, I don't care if you call me cheap, right? Like, everybody's like, you know, you're cheap. Because I think these are fantastic ideas. First of all, for adults, do like a white elephant, which I think that's the term for it. But adults buy gifts all around the same amount. So you set an amount first for all the adults that are going to participate. It might be $20, it might be $30, but you buy one gift. And you all get together around the holidays, and you draw numbers from a hat. And whoever draws number 1 goes over and picks out a gift from all the gifts that are sitting there wrapped, and they unwrap the gift, and they're like, yay, I got a gift. And then the person who drew number 2 can either steal that gift or go get their own gift. So it actually behooves you to get the last number, because you could steal any person's gift, or you could go and get the last gift. So that's a great way to really minimize costs for adults. And then you can do something very similar for children. So if you're a part of a large group of people and you all have a bunch of different kids, and some of you have 5 kids and some of you have 1 kid, and you're like, this is just getting out of control buying for all these kids. Well, then again, you could put all the kids' names in a hat, and all the adults could draw a kid's name, and then you set an amount, and everybody buys 1 gift for that child. So every child gets the same number of presents and at about the same value, and you don't have to worry about, you know, people feeling left out, or like, well, why did they get this and I only got that, and none of that, right? So there's 2 ways to keep Christmas very economical and also fun, and keep you centered around what's really important, and that is the people in your lives, not the stuff in your life. So just wanted to add that in there. Reggie and Roseanne, what kind of budget busters have you guys experienced prior to being on this plan? What used to just throw you off every month? You guys are on mute.
Don't say it.
We both have old cars, and they like to break. So those are usually our budget busters.
Yeah, that's a big one. So like repairs and just maintenance and upkeep.
Yep.
Yep, that's a big one. And so that goes back to the earlier point about having an emergency fund, right? And so having $1,000 socked away in case you have to repair the tires, and then you repair the tires, and maybe that costs you $200. And so the next month, you would replenish the emergency fund, get it back up to $200 or $1,000, excuse me. And so basically, it's like your own little credit card, because how many times when you needed a repair on the car did you swipe the card? And that's not just to you, Reggie and Roseanne, but to the group at large, right? We carry around plastic as our emergency fund. Bad idea. Bad idea, right? So, all right, so, I mean, we talked a little bit about what a budget is, what it isn't. We've gotten into some of the nuances. We talked about putting cash in envelopes. Chad, do you guys have any other questions about like budgeting? Anything you want us to talk about specifically? Get more familiar with?
Good question. Since we recently got married, like 2 years ago, now we have a son, and we're planning on buying a house soon. When you're saying to pay off the credit card and cancel, then that also means that your credit history is erased, and you won't qualify to buy a house. And by the time we save enough money to buy a house cash, you'll probably be off to college. So basically, we're going to have a house.
Yeah.
So, what's the plan say about that?
Yeah, that's a big question because obviously house buying is a little bit different. So first and foremost, it's different. But as far as credit goes, everything stays with you for 7 years, right? So even if you called and canceled today, the credit cards you have are going to remain on your credit report for 7 years, and it'll still show that you paid on time, and so that you still had a good credit history. And the same thing with when you pay off a car loan, it'll stay on there for 7 years. And so it's not like when we called and canceled 9 months ago our credit cards, it's not like our credit just went and vanished. But here's the other side of that coin, because home buying is different. One, according to Dave Ramsey's principles, like he wants everybody to do what he calls the 100% down plan. And so if you could buy a house with cash, he'd much prefer it, but he understands that that's just not realistic. And so there are some guidelines about buying a house. One, buy a house that is on a 15-year fixed loan. So instead of getting a 30-year loan, get a 15-year fixed rate loan. Second, try to put at least $10,000 down. Right? Third, get a house where your monthly mortgage payment is not more than 25% of your take-home pay. So those are kind of the guidelines. So as far as credit goes, if I'm still going to need credit to buy a house, that's kind of a fallacy because there are banks out there. And my sister is an underwriter for mortgages, and she does this for a living. And so I've had these conversations with her, and it's everything Dave teaches about getting a mortgage is 100% accurate. You do not need a credit score to buy a house. You just need to be able to prove that you pay your bills on time. And so you can do that through like your rental agreements. They will contact your landlords, your utilities, those types of things. And it's called manual underwriting. So instead of a bank relying on the 3-digit code to tell them whether or not you pay your bills, they would actually just call your landlord, your utilities, these other entities and find out, do you pay your bills on time? And then as long as you've been at your job for 2+ years and you can, proof of income and all those different things, a bank will manually underwrite your loan and you would still get a loan even without a credit score.
Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah. And so since that's the only thing you would ever use credit for, a credit score really is, at the end of the day, a credit score just proves how much you do or don't play kissy face with the bank. Right? So do you make all your payments on time? Do you have lots and lots of debt to prove that you are you manage credit well? I'll tell you, after we paid off our car, our credit score actually went down. Not by a lot, but it went down. I paid off a car. I was responsible with credit. I was never late. My score went down because I paid it off. So I'm not a big fan of FICO. I'm not a big fan of credit scores because I don't like a third-party entity telling me what I'm worth when they never actually divulge how they got to that algorithm, right? Like they'll tell you what it's made up of. And a credit score is made up of 5 components, all of which are debt indicators. So how much debt are you in? How long have you had the debt? How do you pay your debt on time? What type of debt do you have? And is your debt new? And so those 5 indicators supposedly tell them whether or not I'm credit worthy, but they won't give me the algorithm to tell me exactly how they came up with that. I don't like that. That's just me.
Okay.
You guys have other questions about like budgeting or just kind of like the month-to-month stuff, or is it more around like big purchases and more like future planning?
No, I think that's all the questions we had so far.
Okay, cool. So I'm going to actually share my screen with you guys, and I'll show you what a simple budgeting form could look like. So when we start talking about, what should go in a budget and what are all the different categories and all those different things, we take a look. This is my budget, and I'll take a look at November since October is pretty much done anyway. And so you start off with your income. What's coming in. And so 2 pay dates in November, and so we know for the entire month this is what we have to work with. And so then I list out everything in a budget in the order of importance. And so for me and my family, giving to the Lord, what is the Lord's, is important to us. So that's the first line item. And then savings and investing, we already have our $1,000 emergency fund. So right now we're not contributing to any other savings or investing at this time until we're out of debt. And then expenses, you want to list your expenses in the order of importance as well. And Dave Ramsey talks about the 4 walls. He talks about taking care of the 4 walls of your house, meaning food, housing, clothing, and transportation. So you'll see that here's our food categories, and we break up the food into multiple categories like actual groceries, toiletries, so anything that I would pick up at Walmart that I can't eat, like paper towels, toilet paper, cleaning supplies, that type of thing. And then because we have a 9-month-old at home, those are non-negotiables, right? The baby has to have baby formula, baby diapers, baby wipes, and so there is another envelope stuffed with cash to make sure that we buy what we need specifically for the baby, instead of wrapping those all into one. From there, our housing, so our mortgage payment plus our homeowners association, so that's what's due for that month, and then it goes on to utilities. So these are our basic necessities, right? Electric, water, trash removal. You'll notice that here we don't have cable listed, we don't have internet listed. These are just the basic necessities listed right here, so that if I ever had to start cutting things out, I know to keep scrolling down because it's less important, right? Transportation, so auto insurance and gas, oil, and maintenance. So got to make sure we're filling up, right? And I think this is a big one that a lot of people miss out on, in my opinion. I know before I was on this plan, I didn't budget for gas in the car. I just went and filled up. And I spent what I spent, but I never planned it. I never said, hey, how many miles am I traveling? What kind of gas mileage does my car get? And now I think about those things to determine what I should be budgeting and putting aside to putting gas in the car each month. Then after that, it's my own personal opinion that life insurance or other insurances are more important than things like cable TV and et cetera, so that's why I have that listed next. And so both my wife and I have life insurance policies. Under bills and subscriptions, this is all the stuff that could go away if I absolutely needed to find something to get rid of. This is the stuff that's kind of like nice to have, not need to have. So, there's the internet, cell phones. Our daughter is in a dance studio. We have a security system, and then, of course, they play on abcmouse.com, and we have Hulu Plus instead of cable. So notice, no cable bill. We actually have an over-the-air antenna. I get 60 channels for free, and I don't pay DirecTV $99 a month anymore. When my wife and I sat down for the first time to really do a budget this way, and we looked at all the bills and subscriptions, this number now totals $239. It used to total over $500. So we went through here and we started slashing things. We got rid of DirecTV. We went down to 1 cell phone for a while. We're back up to 2, but I used to pay $160 a month at AT&T, and now I pay $85 to T-Mobile. We got, I called the security company. They were charging us $42 a month. Now they only charge us $26. Same thing with the cable. I got them to lower the bill. And so we went through this, and we started slashing a bunch of expenses. And we got it down to $239 instead of $500 something. It's always a good idea to have a little bit of pocket money, right? Some cash in your pocket so that you can just kind of blow it. You work hard for your money, so you should be able to like go through the drive-thru every once in a while. But you got to be reasonable in this category. You have to be really, really reasonable. This number for my wife used to be $100 per paycheck. Then it went down to $80. Then it went down to $50. And last month, we came to an agreement that it would go down again to $40 because we both have a similar goal, and that is to get ourselves out of debt. And that was a way that we could start throwing extra money at debt, was by taking less and less money out to go and blow. You'll see that mine dropped all the way down to $20, right? So all is fair in love and war, I suppose. I was willing to go down. She wasn't. That's fine. We pay our 4-year-old a commission instead of an allowance. So she has a chore list. For each chore she completes, she gets a gold coin. Each gold coin represents a quarter. By the end of the week, she averages about $7. So she has about 4 to 5 chores a day. Every single day, she can earn herself about $7. She's earned herself more in some cases. She's earned herself less. She does the work, she gets paid. She doesn't do the work, she doesn't get paid. Simple as that. And then debts. And this is where the big numbers are. If I expand this for you for a second, you'll see historically we had an auto loan for $4,300. We paid that. We had a water softener loan for $5,700. We have paid that. My auto loan, we just paid off last month, and when we started this program, we owed $10,000 still. So in 18 months, we've paid off $20,000 completely, plus another $10,000 or so to the mortgage, right? Because we've been paying the mortgage that whole time, so add another $10,000 there, and we've paid off $30,000 worth of debt in 18 months. We still have a mountain to climb. We got my wife's student loans, which total $38,000. That's a total of all these loans here. And I have 2 separate loans, one with ACS and one with Nelnet, currently in forbearance while we focus on hers for another $65,000 worth of debt there. So we have a mountain to climb, but we're on a plan. We're executing that plan, and that plan is proving so far to be very successful very quickly. So I'll stop there for a second and see if anybody has any questions about like any of these categories. If they feel like, hey, I didn't see X, Y, and Z, what about that? Or any other questions you might have about the budget. No questions? Everybody?
Nino.
Oh, yeah, go
Can you
ahead.
hear me?
Yep, can hear you now.
No, I have actually been trying to do something similar for the budgeting as far as the Excel spreadsheet. Is there any way you could send me like a format that you utilize? I kind of like your, well, I don't kind of, I like your format a lot better than I've been using because mine was really simple.
Yeah, actually, I do this through Google Spreadsheets, so I'll just send you a copy of this, blanket,
Okay.
and then you can just kind of change it up as you need to.
Yeah, because I didn't do any of the codes or anything like that, so I was just going like column A would be like November, column B would be December, then January was C, and I would just close them out. I didn't do all those little codes and all that, so I like that.
All right, yeah, definitely. And as I think about it, one thing I didn't mention, I mean, you can see it here. So here's the 2 pay periods. So as we look at everything that's due for the month, then I start to assign which paycheck is that stuff coming from. So for something like groceries, it's an even split between the 2 paychecks. But because the mortgage will be paid tomorrow on the 31st, I obviously don't have the mortgage coming out again until the end of next month for December 1st. And so then you start to allocate which paycheck are these expenses coming from. And at the bottom, notice this. At the bottom, I've assigned every single dollar. There's nothing left over. That doesn't mean there's $0 in the bank. It just means every single dollar I have coming in November has an assignment. So like 200 of those dollars has an assignment to go into the Christmas fund. But because I already have my $1,000 emergency fund, I'm not saving any additional money at this point. So I hope that's pretty clear, straightforward, and makes sense. Cool. All right, so I think we covered a lot about budgeting. I think we continue to kind of dive into specific things in later Hangouts. I'm going to wrap us up for today, but feel free to stay on as we dive in personally to a couple of the baby steps so that you guys can get more familiar. Guys, I want to thank you for chiming in and just jamming about budgeting and the importance of budgeting and what a budget is and what a budget isn't and some of the things that get in our way. Great examples about using envelopes to stuff some cash into for things like Christmas shopping, groceries, etc. And so we will reconvene again next week when we're going to talk about credit and Mr. FICO in greater detail. So thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.